Wrestling is a unique combative sport, and when wrestlers hit the ground, they have a little bit different perspective than the average jiu-jitsu fighter. So in this segment, I want to go to the ground and talk about a wrestler's perspective on the ground and the different things that he brings to the fight on the ground. I'm going to use Nathan as a partner here, and the first thing we're going to talk about is passing the guard from a wrestler's perspective. Once the fight hits the ground, and it doesn't matter if I took my opponent down and he pulled guard, or he tried to jump to guard and pull me down. Once we hit this position, and I'm down here in the guard, a real common tactic is for the closed guard. Obviously, there's no secret about the closed guard. I've got to posture up and somehow create an opportunity where I can open my opponent's feet. Now I'm going to take a wrestler's point of view and try and finish just like I would if I was finishing a double leg. In one of the other segments, we talked about a double leg and double leg takedown. And from this position, it's a similar thing. I want to bring my hands down and lower my shoulder into Nathan's stomach so that I pin his hips down. By pinning his hips down, that's going to make it difficult for him to create space and allow him to shrimp and keep the guard position. I want to be careful about allowing him to get his feet inside here where he can push away and keep me out, which would be a whole different passing situation. But once I posture up and I open that guard position from here, I'm just going to put pressure on the tops of his thighs, on his knees, to plant his feet on the mat. I'm going to drop my shoulder into that stomach, into that breadbasket, and I'm going to cover his legs and try and trap them in a double leg situation. So it looks something like this here. Again, I'm taking my head to one side, doesn't matter, I can go either way. I'm going to drop that shoulder. Just imagine there's a spike on the top of your shoulder and you're going to spike it right through his belly button. Pressure on the knees, drop that shoulder, the hips come up, and I capture those legs. Now from here I'm just going to do the Fred Flintstone. I'm just going to tippy-toe around those knees and legs, keeping them thighs isolated together. Again, with that shoulder pressure, it's going to make it hard for Nathan to shrimp and create space to keep the guard. Now he's going to be posting on my head and trying to keep me from working up, and that's okay. I need to be tenacious, I need to be dynamic, I need to be persevering and just grind my head through those hands and keep working up his body. So again, just posturing up, breaking that guard open. I'm going to put pressure on those thighs, driving those feet into the mat. I want to drive my shoulder down into that stomach, spike into the mat. Boom. Hips come up, capture the legs. Capturing those legs right around the thigh. Now I'm just going to tippy-toe around and work up. I need to grind my head in and get through his hands and just work right up into a good cross-side position. But a lot of times what happens here as I pass is, again, just like that double leg takedown, when I get in this position, I spin Nate around here. I get in this position and I'm working my way up, I can look for that ankle lace. Again, working up in that ankle lace and looking for that toe hold submission or calf submission here. I want to capture his hips with my legs, move towards his head, and crank. Okay, another option from here, as I drop my weight, I come around those legs, and especially if he's pushing on my head and trying to keep me from climbing up to cross side, is to step over his feet. Once I step over his feet, I don't want to stay on my side here. I want to transfer to a belly position. Puts a lot of pressure on Nathan's knees, and now from this position, I can start to work up slowly. And now rather than come out in a good cross-side position, I come out in a mount position, which is one of the best positions I can achieve in a fight. From here, obviously, I can do a lot of things, punch and strike and dominate my opponent. So not only can I pass this guard with this double leg pass, working up to a good cross-side position, it gives me a potential opportunity for an ankle lace, which can be a decent submission attempt. Or I can hook those legs, belly down, and then I'll work my way up to that mount position. So this can be a real nice pass, and it's a little bit different pass. A lot of wrestlers are pretty adept at that double leg finish. We do that all the time. So this is a real common way for a wrestler to pass the guard. So a little bit different angle on that double leg pass. Again, dropping my shoulder. I want to keep pressure on his thighs, spiking down so he can't move his hips. Now the legs, locking my hands, and I'm just walking around those legs. Here, work that bottom knee inside. Work up to a good cross-side position. Okay, do it on the other side. Locking those hands, following around, and then looking for that ankle lace, or looking for that mount. And I can belly out and work my way up his body to the mount position. Okay. Double leg pass can be a pretty effective way to get past a guy's open guard. If we move from the open guard to a pass that I like to use occasionally for this closed guard. Sometimes guys have really, really good closed guards. They have strong legs. It's hard to posture up. It's hard to break his feet apart. Okay. One thing that I'll try to do here is what I call a cradle pass. And there's some risks involved that we'll talk about in doing this cradle pass, but it can be a pretty effective pass. Basically what I want to do in this closed guard as I cover is I want to isolate one leg, and it doesn't really matter which leg you pick the side. So I start to cheat a little bit over and isolate one of his legs. As I isolate that leg, I want to come over his head, and this is the dangerous part right here. Anytime I come over his head here, if I don't have him on his side and isolated, I just simply come over here, he'll just slide around and take my back. Now obviously I don't want to be in this position, so there's an inherent risk, and you have to be a bit careful. You got to be attentive here, make sure and isolate, put weight over on this side. If he's turned and you've isolated this leg, it's hard for him to slide out that side and take your back. So that's a very important key. So as I'm here, he's got his closed guard. I'm going to isolate and come over his head. And what I'm doing, if I turn here, is as I isolate, I'm bunching his leg, his bottom leg, towards his head. I'm using my elbow to walk his head towards his knee. Once I get in here, I'm just going to reach through. I'm going to bunch it up. Give me some resistance, Nate. Bunch it up, and I'm coming over the top leg and locking my hands. Okay. Basically, I'm using my leg and my elbow to bunch him up here. And I'm going to take my hands over and lock them on that top leg in a cradle. And once I lock that cradle in, I can walk my hips out over this bottom leg, and it's hard for him to follow and keep his guard at closed guard position. Okay. So I turn around here, isolate that leg, and bunch him up. Locking the hands, keeping that head trapped, and I've broken his feet apart with that bunch cradle. Now I'm just going to slip out and move up to a cross-side position. So a little bit different angle on the cradle pass. Again, I'm isolating one side, isolating that hip and leg. I want to bring my elbow into his ear, and I want to start to bunch his head towards his knee. As I bunch his head towards his knee, I'm going to reach through his legs. Actually, I'm going to reach over his leg and lock my hands. Okay. Coming over his head, locking my hands. Now from here, simply walking my legs out. And I chest into him, and I establish a good cross-side position. It's nice, ain't it, Nate?
Oh yeah, it's a great time. It's real slow like that.
Now, what again, we talked about the inherent risk, and if you don't isolate that hip and get some pressure on this side of his body, how he can take your back. And that sometimes happens. So as I go here and I start to isolate, if he starts to slip his hip and come around to take my back, I can just bring this leg up. And the higher I get this leg up, the harder it is for him to finish and take my back. So if you get yourself into trouble, there's at least a way that you can counter that and keep him from taking your back. Now I can come back over and come back to a safer position and start over again, go to a different pass. All right? So again, turn this way. Let's see how far I can go here. I want to isolate that leg, come over the ear, punch the head towards his knee. Doesn't like it, it's not very comfortable. Okay, the free hand's coming over the top leg. The elbow that's in the ear is going to rotate around the head, and I'm going to lock those hands. Those hands are locked right in there in a cradle. Now I walk those hands out, chest in, cross-side position. The cradle pass. See if we can try it on the other side. Another option here, especially from the open guard. The guy's using his hands, and again, I like to think of this position a lot of times as pummeling like Greco on a horizontal plane. We're horizontal on the mat instead of upright in a normal pummeling position. But you're hand fighting, you're pummeling, you're doing a lot of the same things. All I'm going to do is just capture one hand. I'm going to use this hand now as a 2-on-1, just like if I was standing and using the 2-on-1 to manipulate my opponent so I could take him down. I'm going to capture that 2-on-1 and I'm going to press it to his hips. Okay, once I press it to his hips, I'm going to use this as a point of pressure to walk my legs around his legs and pass his guard. So I pull it in and I press it to his hips. Now I'm just going to tripod up and I'm going to keep that pressure down on his hips so he can't follow me with those legs. Okay, and now I can slide in. Again, your partner's probably hoping he's wearing a cup if you do this, so you get an idea where you want to put the pressure. All right, you're hand fighting, just capturing that 2-on-1, pulling that wrist in, grabbing that right at the elbow, where I can use that again. That elbow joint is like your knee, a one-dimensional joint. I can put some pressure on that elbow joint. I'm going to use all my body weight, spike that down through his hips. I'm going to tripod up. Again, putting more of my body weight up here. And now I'm just going to walk around and come in. Now I think you should be able to distinguish between some of these passes that are more fight-oriented, where my partner can punch me in the mug, okay? And obviously in this situation where I'm here, you can't. It's more of a grappling pass where there's no striking involved. And you're going to have to play with some of these and determine whether or not you can pull this off in an event where a guy can elbow you or punch you in the face. Okay, 2-on-1 pass. Again, just pulling that wrist in, pinning it to his body, using my body weight. Okay, tripod up, walk around, cover, cross-side position. Okay. So there's 3 different passes, kind of from wrestling technique and a wrestler's perspective on how to get past the guy's guard, open or closed. Now that we've covered some guard passes, I want to go to the other side of the coin which is some escapes from the bottom position. And again, these are escapes that come more from a wrestler's perspective and kind of the way a wrestler thinks. If I'm on the bottom here, especially if I've been knocked down or scrambled and found myself on the bottom here, again, I think of these positions, whether I'm on top or bottom, it's kind of like pummeling in that horizontal position. We're both fighting for underhooks and control here. And if I can get an underhook, or I can get a 2-on-1, or I can arm drag, okay, then there's a lot of escapes and reversals and different things that I can do from this position. And we just talked about in this segment a 2-on-1 pass, and the other side of that coin is I've got the same thing from the bottom. I can pull in this hand, control his arm in a 2-on-1 position, and then wiggle my legs out and escape from this 2-on-1 position. So basically I'm using my legs and knees to control the positions, move my hips, create space so that I can weasel out. And all I'm doing is he tries to cover me and look for ways to pass my guard and control my hands so I can't hit him. I'm taking that arm, bringing it across his body in a 2-on-1 position. I switch my hips. Okay, from this 2-on-1 position, all I'm going to do is weasel, hip heist, and weasel my hips out from underneath them. Now from here, I kind of have my choice. I can be aggressive and try to attack him here, which case I may end up in a scramble, which I could come out on top. Maybe I'll come out on bottom. You got to decide and weigh those options. But the conservative thing to do is to probably just get back to a neutral position here, where I come back to my feet and I can start over and hopefully achieve a better position in the next altercation and come out on top rather than being on the bottom. So again, when I'm on the bottom, I'm looking to control those hands, that 2-on-1. Okay, simple from a 2-on-1. Push away, weasel out, keep a good grip on the elbow and the wrist. Hip heist, and I'm the quarters. I'm the neutral position right here. So just a 2-on-1 escape. Pretty simple. Again, I'm using an open guard here. I'm not using a closed guard. This closed guard, what a jiu-jitsu person would tell you, is that this is a neutral position. From my way of thinking and a wrestler's perspective, anytime I'm on the bottom, anytime I'm on my back, I don't feel very neutral. Okay, he's on top of me. I'm carrying his weight. He can punch me. He's looking for ways to pass. And sure, I can be effective in controlling and tie him up and maybe frustrate him and force him to make a mistake, which is more what a jiu-jitsu practitioner is thinking. But at least from my mentality as a wrestler, I'm not used to being on my back. I don't like being on the bottom. And so I want to find a way, use my feet, use my legs and hands, and pummel in this horizontal position, fight, hand fight, and find a way to escape and get out of here. 2-on-1, scramble, hip heist. Okay, and I'm back out to a neutral position. The hip heist, as I use that term, is basically just any time that I switch my hips. Now my hips are facing up. If I switch my hips, now they're facing down. They're facing down, and I need to switch my hips so that they're facing up. I hip heisted the other direction. It's a common wrestling term to hip heist your hips one direction or the other. So as I use that term throughout this segment, you'll kind of know what I mean from now on. So that's just a basic 2-on-1 escape. Here. Okay. Again, 2-on-1, I can attack. Move into him, create that scramble. Okay, the 2-on-1 escape. So just like the 2-on-1 escape, when we're pummeling in that horizontal position, a lot of times I can achieve that underhook. And especially in the half guard, I like this underhook position. Okay, if I end up in this half guard position, if he gets an underhook, okay, he's controlling me and able to pass my half guard and achieve a better position. And here's the fight. If I get the underhook, now I can circle towards that underhook, and I've got an escape route, either to like the 2-on-1 pass, hip heist, and come out and come back to a neutral position. Or if he tries to whizzer and counter me here, I can come back under and roll him to escape. Okay, so if we switch our half guard, you'll see as he's got a half guard position here, I've trapped one of his legs in half guard. First thing I want to do as I get this half guard position is I want to look for the underhook. I don't want him to be inside and get the underhook on me. He's going to start posting on my legs and working the mount or working the pass to cross-side position. So if he's got that underhook and he's got me covered here, I've got to find a way to shrimp, to bump, and re-pummel and get back inside. Once I get inside and get that underhook, I want to do what I call circling towards that underhook, because I want to take my hips towards that underhook. Here. Towards the underhook. Now you can see the space that I've created, and it's going to be more and more difficult as I create this space for Nate to keep half guard and hold me down. Okay, and that's the object here, is to move to a better position. So I underhook, I circle the underhook. Okay, now once I get enough space here, I ought to be able to hip heist and come out to a neutral position. Okay, again, half guard, underhook, circle the underhook. Okay, hip heist to a neutral position. Look at the other side, underhook. Okay, Nate covers me in a half guard situation. I'm underhooking, circling my underhook, posting my body up on that elbow, and now I'm just going to slide that inside bottom leg out, hip heist my hips, and I'm in a neutral position here. Now, a real common thing for Nate to do is he doesn't want to lose this top position. Switch guards or half guards. He doesn't want to lose this top position. He realizes as soon as I get this underhook that he's in danger of losing this top position. So he does an overhook and starts to hip into me. Okay, to keep me down here, he whizzers real hard, driving this overhook into my hips and covering me with his hips. Okay, so if we turn this way, not so far, right there. I got that underhook. Okay, I'm starting to get away. He whizzers, drops his hips, and covers me. Okay. Now he's effectively eliminated my space for me to escape from that circling that underhook. So now I want to go the other way. I want to use this underhook as a handle, a lever. I'm going to take my head towards his hips and reach for his ankle. Okay. As I'm in this half guard position, he's covering, his weight and momentum is carrying him this way to keep me down. I'm going to change directions. Take my head towards his hips. Reach for this ankle so I have some leverage, something to lift on. Okay. I've effectively reversed him or escaped. Again, if we go on this side, I start to get out. He whizzers, hips into me. I'm going to take my head towards his hips, reach for that ankle. I'm pulling on this underhook and disappearing underneath. Okay, it's almost like a gramby roll in wrestling, but it's from a much different position. Okay, again, half guard. He whizzers, hip pressure. I'm going head towards the hips, reaching through to that ankle. I'm going to pull on the underhook, lift on the ankle. Okay. Pulling on the underhook, lifting on the ankle. So these escapes from the bottom position, the 2-on-1 escape, the underhook to a hip heist, and the underhook to a roll, will look a little bit like this at a little more live pace. So I'm here. If I use that 2-on-1, you can just drill it just like that. We're here, we're working guard, open guard. Nate's trying to cover me, keep me down. There's a 2-on-1. Okay, half guard situation. He's trying to cover and keep me down. I'm going to start circling my underhook and hip heist. Half guard, get my underhook. Okay, circle towards my underhook hip heist. Okay, half guard. Start the circle, he covers and whizzers. I'm rolling him through, going through under his hips. Here, start the hip heist, he covers, whizzers. Okay. It's important to remember, if you're doing that roll, that you want to kind of bring your knees towards your chest when you roll. I don't want to be flat backed. I don't roll. Here I'm more square like a box. Boxes don't roll very well. If I create like that rocking chair where my back is arched, I disappear under there and I roll much easier that way. So that's something to think about if you're having trouble with your momentum and finishing that rolling technique. Wrestlers bring a unique mat sense to the grappling game in a little bit different perspective. What I think of as reversals, where a jiu-jitsu person would call a sweep, is something that I want to cover now. And a real common sweep for me, and we covered this in one of the other segments, is the arm drag. Again, if we think of this as pummeling or grappling or wrestling in a horizontal position, just like the arm drag that I do when I'm standing to create that opportunity, Gesundheit, to penetrate and take my opponent down, here I'm arm dragging and creating that little window of opportunity to attack my opponent's body and create the situation where I can reverse him or roll him or sweep him, if you want to call it a sweep. Okay, so again, from that open guard, if he's posting on my knees or giving me his hands, I just want to drag that hand across. Okay, just patting that hand down, again, above the elbow, pulling that hand across. Okay, as I do that, I'm going to take my free hand and reach across for that far lat. Okay, now most guys, when you get here, are going to crowd back into you. They feel you starting to take their back. They don't want you to take their back. They're going to bring their hips and their energy back across to try and pin you down. And this is actually what you're looking for. You want them to give that energy back into your body. So as I feel him start to cover me and crowd me back towards the mat, again, I want to create that rocking chair arch in my back, and I'm going to pull. This hand that was the arm drag hand is going to release, and I can post on the mat to help me generate a little more power. I'm going to pull on this lat, bring my knees towards my head, and roll my opponent this direction. The nice thing about it is they come right up into the mount position, so it's a pretty fancy, pretty snazzy little roll. Again, I turn around, and I pat that hand down and drag it across. I'm reaching for that lat. Okay? As he covers and gives me that energy, bringing my knees towards my head, creating that arch in my back. This hand is going to push on the mat. This hand is going to pull on that nice handle, his lat. Okay? So all that's happening at the same time. Right into that mount position. Arm drag, reaching, okay, he covers, energy, roll, okay. Arm drag, reaching, roll. Arm drag. Now, occasionally you'll run into a person that when you arm drag them, they don't give you that energy back in. They stay here. All I'm going to do is take this bottom leg and kick right where his knee meets the floor. I want to kick that leg out, take his base away from him. As I do, throwing this other leg around, crawling up, taking his back. It's another option. If the guy doesn't come back into you here so that you can roll him, you're just going to continue around his back and take his back. Again, very good position here. You create those scrambles, you give yourself a couple different options to reverse the guy or take the guy and change the position. It's always nice. Okay. So that's the arm drag to a sweep or reversal. It's actually becoming one of my favorite little sweeps. I like that sweep a lot. So the arm drag reversal or arm drag sweep is a real nice technique. Another little bit different technique, once a guy has you in cross-side position, the more traditional jiu-jitsu person is going to try and shrimp away here and pull what they consider a neutral position or guard position. So their objective is to brace, shrimp away so they can get this inside knee through and pull guard. And my way of thinking, at least from a wrestler's perspective, is that if I do all that work to create space and shrimp away here so I can bring this knee up, I think, in my opinion, I would much rather be aggressive and try and get to a better position. I'm, as a wrestler, not comfortable being in the guard or being on my back necessarily. So when I shrimp and get away here, rather than pull this knee up and move my head away and pull guard, I'm going to go in, move towards my opponent, and try to attack this bottom leg, this outside leg, in a single leg, as any wrestler knows how to finish a single leg. So as I brace from cross side and shrimp real hard here, okay, and brace away, rather than pull guard, move away with my head, I'm going to move my head in. Again, I'm going to hip heist real hard here and attack his ankle in a single leg position right here. And on the other segment, we were in this position, we finished a single leg in our takedown segment in my tapes. So you should know, if you've bought that tape, how to finish from here. But what I want to do is I want to stay below his knee. I don't want to attack him at the knee, because that's going to allow him to sprawl and cover me. So as I shrimp away and I come and hip heist, I want to make sure and stay below his knee, down on his ankle. If I'm at his knee, he's going to take his foot away and cover my head with his hips. Now I'm in no better position. Okay, so if I wrap my hand to his ankle, not only is that going to give me some leverage to complete that hip heist and come to this position, but it's going to, his knee joint is going to keep him from bringing his hips around and covering my head and extending me and getting me in trouble again. Once I get here, I'm going to keep circling to that angle and change hands. This hand's going to switch. That hand's going to capture the ankle, and I'm going to reach across. Try and drive through him. Okay? So a little bit different offensive technique from the cross-side position. Okay? Rather than just shrimping here and creating space to pull guard, I'm going to shrimp here, create space, and now I'm going to attack this ankle and hip heist right to that single leg. Okay? Most people don't expect you to go that way. When you create that space, they're covering, they expect you to pull guard. They expect that knee to come in and come across. So you'll catch guys by surprise sometimes. Again, cross-side position, I'm shrimping, creating that space, bracing, hip heist. Here, change hands, okay, that angle. So shrimping to that single leg would be a really good option and a much more aggressive offensive option than maybe pulling guard if you're not real comfortable being on your back. A nice finish from this single leg position is a gramby, and a lot of times you'll find yourself in this single leg position and a guy will come over your body and try and trap your wrist to try and extend you and lock you in here. And a lot of times I'll try and bait a guy into doing that, okay? Because I want him to come over my body and feel like he can isolate this arm. And I'm just going to trap that arm to my side. And now I'm going to rotate this shoulder underneath, and I'm going to lift with this ankle that I've trapped with the single leg. So if I adjust my position here a little bit, you'll see that I'm trapping that hand that he brings over my body, and I'm lifting here. I'm just going to roll here. I use that ankle outside and lift and trap. And now what I want to do is I want to hip heist towards his hips. I don't want to turn towards his head. If I turn towards his head, he's just going to come back in behind me. I'll get myself into trouble. So I want to hip heist this way towards his hips. And now we're almost back in that double leg position that we've already covered, where I can work up into cross side. Okay. And again, it doesn't matter if I shrimp here and attack the single and he comes over my body, I want to trap that wrist. Okay, I'm going to take this knee up to here, create that rolling situation. I want to lift on that ankle and hang on to this wrist, just taking him over the top. Boom, right here. Now, hip heist towards his hips. Here, capture that nice cross-side position. And you might find yourself stuck underneath a guy. Maybe you took a bad shot, maybe you got snapped down, maybe you found yourself in a scramble. Well, you're in this quarter position, and a common tactic for a lot of guys is to try and achieve a side position where they're digging a knee in here, and they're trapping your wrist, trying to isolate for a choke or an arm bar or whatever they're working for here. Okay, and that's okay. He brings that in. I'm going to capture it. Now, I don't want to gramby with my arm in between his legs, because once I roll him over, he's going to trap that leg and probably pound the crap out of me with his free hand. So I don't want to keep my arm inside of his legs. I want to rotate that arm out and around on the outside so that I'm again in that single leg position, attacking his ankle. Okay. Arm on the outside of his leg. I'm going to rotate, roll and lift. Boom. Okay, so a live pace or a real-time single leg to gramby will look a little bit like this. Caught in cross-side position, embracing and shrimping. Again, something that some guys won't expect. They won't expect you to roll that way, trap that wrist, and go to that gramby position. So it's a nice technique. Now this is a little bit different option from the bottom. A lot of times, if you're being aggressive here, using this open guard and working here, a lot of times you find yourself in this position where either he's sucking your leg up to try and pass, or maybe you've gone for a triangle choke and he's countered that by sucking that in. And what I want to do here is I want to keep his head pinned down with my leg, okay? And as I pin his head down, now he starts to think he's going to get past my leg, and he starts to walk his hips. Can't clear his head, but he's going to walk his hips around my body. I'm going to take my free hand and reach it over his back. And now, as I release his head with my leg and let that pop, I'm going to hip heist real hard in this direction, and basically like a hip toss in the standing position in judo or wrestling. I'm going to take his hips over the top, and I have to hip heist and use my power, brace up with this bottom arm to do that. So it's imperative as I do this that I don't let him cover my head so that I can't hip heist. Here. Now as I hip heist and hip into him, I come all the way over the top to cross-side position on that opposite side. Again, it's one of those situations where a guy doesn't expect you to kind of move in that direction. It's a little bit different perspective than your average technique that you do in the grappling situation. So again, whether you sucked that leg up or you went for that triangle and you didn't get it, and he's starting to pass here, I've got to hold his head in. If I let his head go, I've got nothing here. There's no way I'm going to build up enough momentum to hip heist and pull his body weight over the top of me. So I need to make it difficult for him and get him to bring those hips around hard to get that pass. As he does, you can see I'm sitting up, posting on that bottom arm. I want to grab his waist. Now as I let his head pop and it comes up, and I hip heist, I come all the way over his body. Right to here. Now I'm on top. I'm in a good spot. Scramble to cross side. It's a little bit different technique. Open guard. Go for that triangle. Hold him down. Don't let him come. As he comes around, sit up. Capture that hip. Let the head pop. As he brings his head and chest up to cover me, I'm hip heisting. Here. Okay, a little bit quicker speed, a little more realistic speed. Here. again, a little bit different perspective, something guys might not expect from the grappling position. So whether you're trying to pass the guard or you're using escapes and reversals, a wrestler has a little bit different perspective, and you studying that perspective is going to make you a better fighter.